Hello, I'm Simon Owens, and you're listening to The Business of Content, a podcast about how publishers create, distribute, and monetize their digital content. This week, we're talking about whether Twitter is seeing real, meaningful growth after years of stagnation. For the past several years, Twitter's been a punching bag, both for tech writers and Wall Street analysts. It's remained unprofitable, was a magnet for trolls, and, worst of all, its user growth came to a halt. But in just the past few months, we've seen some meaningful signs of life at the embattled social network. For one, it had its first profitable quarter in, well, forever. But it also saw growth in other areas. For one, though monthly active users growth is flat, it saw a sharp increase in daily active users. Also, a report from Social Flow found that Twitter traffic to news sites has increased while Facebook referral traffic has fallen. Is this a sign of a company turnaround, or just a temporary blip at an otherwise struggling company? I recently discussed these questions with Jonathan Rick, a digital media consultant based in Washington, D.C. Let's jump right into it. Hey, Jonathan, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Simon.
So you wear a lot of different hats. You're self-employed. You're an independent consultant. So you do a lot of things relating to like digital media consulting. What are some of the different things that you do?
Yeah, I'm really lucky in that I describe myself as I'm one of those lucky people whose jobs is an extension of their hobby. I get paid to do what I would do for fun. And I've been able to carve out three lines of related work. One, social and digital media. Two, ghostwriting and editing. And then three, that brings them all together, training workshops. So they're all basically around the same communications, marketing, public relations, advertising subjects, and keeps me busy, never a dull day. And best of all, as I think you can attest, is that I get to work for myself.
Yeah. And so I know for a fact you as part of your services, you help run companies' Twitter accounts, because I think one time you accidentally tweeted, DM me from
No, that
client
was not me.
account.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
We'll leave them unnamed so that they can be blissfully unaware, or that they were briefly masquerading as you. But the reason I had you on was to talk about Twitter, which has been in the news lately, finally with some good news. For years, Twitter has been kind of a punching bag, especially for tech journalists who are always wanting to claim that it's on the bridge of dying, that it's failing to innovate, that Facebook is crushing it. But in just the last few months, it's rolled out, a number of product iterations, and there are signs that it might be working. So we have some like positive news from Twitter. There was just a report out recently that publishers are reporting an increase of Twitter referral traffic. It used to be that Facebook sent like 4 or 5 times more traffic than Twitter did. Now it's only sending 2 times more traffic. They're reporting increased engagement. Most importantly, not most importantly, but they're seeing an increase in daily active users. But most importantly, Twitter, in its most recent earnings report, turned a profit, which is pretty big news considering it's spent almost its entire existence losing money. So, but it's not all rosy news. In that same earnings report, they reported that monthly active user growth has stalled, even though the daily active users has grown. And some critics are pointing out that profitability is partially because they laid off a bunch of people, so they reduced their overall cost. I wonder, let's just kind of jump right into it. Like, do you kind of buy in that Twitter is starting to experience an actual real turnaround?
It's a good question. I guess the way I would answer is I hope so. I think it's a little premature to tell. As you pointed out, some of the reasons for the profit in the past quarter may have been temporary rather than long term. And so I guess I'd point out 2 things. Number one, I think Twitter needs to recognize that it's never going to rival Facebook. It's never going to achieve its original dreams, but that's okay. And I'm not actually the first person to make this observation. I think it might have been Ezra Klein or Matthew Iglesias or maybe even Will Aramis. I don't remember, but it's not, an original observation. The fact of the matter is that, I don't know, what does Twitter have? 500 million users?
About 380 million, I think.
380 million. That's a massive, major achievement. And I think, that, listen, they're not getting new users. And that probably is not going to radically change. I think Twitter, rather than chasing this pipe dream, ought to acclimate itself to that reality and find a way to best serve its users.
Mhm.
So that's
I agree. Like it's always been unfairly compared to Facebook, but I think it's really apples to oranges because Facebook is a closed social network. Most of it is behind kind of a wall. You have to be a user to engage and enjoy Facebook content. So of course it has to rely largely on numbers related to actual logged in users, where Twitter is an open network. So tweets are often, aggregated in articles. They're displayed in like news broadcast. They are able to be accessed by users who aren't actually logged in. Like nobody would judge the New York Times solely on its logged in users, right? It would it judges it on how often it's mentioned, like actual traffic to the website. And so I agree with you wholly that like Twitter's 380 million logged in users, that's just logged in users. That I think it's actual user base, people who are coming to the site to follow individual users, like celebrities tweets, people who are seeing them embedded in articles, people who are seeing them in live football and basketball games, seeing tweets displayed in real time. Like I think that I think Jack Dorsey has often made this argument that you can't judge Twitter just by its logged in users, but Wall Street has basically continued to just roll its eyes and basically claim that Jack is using that as a way to just dodge criticism of its inability to grow.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. That's exactly right. Twitter. Twitter's the bottom line is that Twitter's carved out an enviable niche. It's where the influencer class, it's just, I guess, a nice way to say media pundits hang out. And second, I think, whether we like it or not, it's made itself into a sort of mirror that reflects directly and immediately our president's mind. And then finally, as you, I think, rightly pointed out, nobody really embeds Facebook posts on news websites. Certainly, I haven't seen a Facebook post appear on Saturday Night Live, whereas everybody does it with Twitter and PowerPoint presentations on TV. It's in many ways, as I said, it's carved out an enviable niche. And I think rather than chase this white whale, it ought to focus on what it does well.
Mm-hmm. And it's also just has just dominated in terms of real time news discussion. Like whenever any kind of breaking news happens, I never look at Facebook because there's always going to be hours of lag time before people start posting it. And certainly I'm not going to see any content from people who are actually live or experts on the ground. Whereas Twitter is, whenever there's some kind of like huge piece of breaking news, like it's always becomes this amazing platform where you just see, news breaking in real time. You see experts in that particular topic weighing in. And then even if it's something that's happening like in a physical location, tweets being surfaced from that actual location of people on the ground. And and like Facebook, for all its attempts to get more involved in news, like they just can't even compare to that.
Well, exactly. I'll tell you just yesterday. So I live in the Clarendon section of Arlington, Virginia. And I should have known this, I guess, but there was a parade on Wilson Boulevard through Clarendon last night. I had no idea what it was. Turned to Twitter, and within seconds, it's the Mardi Gras parade. That just doesn't. So in addition to breaking news, I think Twitter is especially useful at local news. I actually have a Twitter list of Clarendon people. I also have a list for I'm a swimmer, so I have a list of swimming people, and that's how I learned that Michael Phelps, I guess just yesterday, had his second child.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the kind of local thing, and I think so. I was reading this article in Bloomberg. So Snapchat launched this brilliant thing called Snapchat Maps, and it's now even live on the web. You don't have to be, an actual Snapchat user to do it. And I could basically click on any location on the map of the United States and see Snapchat stories from that location. And since Twitter is such a real-time news network, like I'm surprised they haven't. Apparently, they had this Twitter local feature they were working on, but then they never launched it. Like imagine, you seeing this parade and wondering what it was. Like right now you have to like manually curate a Twitter Clarendon list. Like imagine just being able to zoom in on Clarendon on a map, click on that and start seeing tweets that are geotagged to that location. I think that would be an incredibly powerful tool that especially journalists would love, especially during, any kind of breaking news, like what happened in, with the Las Vegas shooting and stuff like that. I'm really, after reading that, it just clicked in my head, and I'm kind of disappointed that Twitter hasn't launched such a tool.
Well, Simon, we're in sort of lockstep agreement here. What bothers me as a diehard loyal user of Twitter is that I sort of think that Twitter has succeeded despite itself. In other words, it's not doing enough to innovate. There's so many. Listen, it gave us it changed our avatars, which is our headshot from squares to circles. That's not innovation. Adding a real time counter of the number of retweets a tweet gets. That's not innovation. That's evolutionary. It's nipping and tucking. There's so much that it could be doing. I mean, you know this as well as anyone. The hashtag was invented by Twitter users, not Twitter itself. And it truly pains me that the things you're mentioning, I don't know if Twitter is thinking about them at some place or focusing on advertising sales or is just preoccupied with other stuff. But the biggest thing they did, the 280 characters, turned out, I think, to be a smashing success. I initially detested the idea. I've come around to it, as I think many other people have. I just wish they would. I read an article today. Actually, it was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation annual letter. It's they call it the top 10 toughest questions we receive, and I noted one line in there that if for the Gates Foundation, if some of their ideas are not failing, and that was the word they used, they're not doing their job correctly. And I wish Twitter would sort of become more adventurous.
So you mentioned this 280 character limit. Like I remember I was super bullish on that from the start. I was excited. I was mad that I wasn't one of the early test cases because I have always been frustrated by the 140 character limit because it just didn't seem to. I don't know. There were so many tweets I've had over the years that was just needed those like 5 extra characters, and like obviously like the 140 characters is like an anachronism back to SMS text messaging when that was the limit to the number of characters you could send via text message. So it wasn't surprising to me that almost immediately they saw increased engagement, and I bet you that played like a huge part in why they started seeing more daily active user growth, because like people, when you had a little bit of extra breathing room, not too much, like you couldn't write a 10,000 word screed, but when you had that little bit of extra breathing room, you could add in a little bit more nuance. You weren't like artificially having to cut characters or condense like words into like, text speak and stuff like that. And I think that's what like really like allowed the platform to breathe a little and be a little bit sharper competitor to Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The one of the new things, the threaded tweets that they introduced, that was developed by users as a tweet storm, and good for Twitter for finally co-opting the idea. But I think from my view, I wish it would do more of this. Facebook runs like 100 tests a day in its newsfeed, and I'm probably getting the number low. What is it, 1,000? I don't know. I wish Twitter would. And listen, there are different scales, different resources, but I couldn't agree more with what you said, Simon.
One product that I don't think has gotten much coverage yet, especially considering Facebook has gotten so much coverage for the same thing, is Twitter Video. Like I've been now that they openly display video counts, I regularly see Twitter videos coming through my feed that have hundreds of thousands or even millions of views. So it seems clear, and some super viral videos that have started on Twitter. And I think it's like Twitter is becoming a really formidable player in the video space to rival Facebook. Like Facebook has some videos that are in the 20, 30 million view count, which I haven't seen anything in that much with Twitter. But given how much play is given to like Facebook supposedly rivaling YouTube, like I'm surprised like Twitter isn't getting more. And I especially like how, organizations like CNN and like Politico and others are using tools like Snapstream, which full disclosure is a client of mine, to like quickly clip stuff that's really innovative and good on TV and then throw it onto Twitter very quickly in a way that wouldn't work as well for like Facebook. And also we're now seeing it with NBC doing it with the Olympics coverage and highlights and stuff like that. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on Twitter video? I think it's been like really good.
Yeah, I think it's been good. But I think they could be doing so much more. I think Twitter, I don't think it's missed an opportunity here, but I think it's in danger of falling behind. I think Twitter should be ground zero for every sports game in the world. There's a great line from The West Wing. President Bartlett is a Celtics fan, and he's watching the game, and someone comes in and asks him, "So how are the Celtics doing?" And he says, "The only thing that matters are the last 5 minutes." To say they were losing, but it's true. The only thing a lot of people care about is watching from the Super Bowl, Tom Brady's Hail Mary pass at the end. They want to see the highlights, the short clips, and that stuff is perfect for Twitter. Our attention span isn't long, so it's optimized for time, and it's juicy. It's actually pretty easy to produce. It pains me. That I, for instance, spent 10 minutes this morning trying to find a video. I think was it Chloe Kim who won a gold medal yesterday in the Olympics. And I just wish they would do a better way when there are major events, the Olympics, the Super Bowl, of making it easy to find the highlights of each event.
So I think this is something that dovetails into something I read the other day, is that like different sports leagues treat highlights differently in terms of like the IP. Like the NBA, they allow any user to post highlights, and so NBA highlights have really proliferated on places like Instagram and Twitter, whereas NFL is constantly file copyright claims against users who post highlights that aren't coming from official NFL or people who are licensing their content because they consider the highlights, valuable intellectual property and not subject to fair use, which I just think is completely ridiculous. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the NBA is increasing viewership right now, whereas NFL is experiencing all-time lows in terms of viewership, and it's because they're basically strangling their fans and not allowing them to kind of basically be marketing gurus on their behalf by constantly sharing highlights. And I think I'm pretty sure NBA is super protective of its IP of the Olympics and has been cracking down on people who are sharing stuff that's not coming through the NBC account. So I wonder if that kind of speaks to it. Maybe that's not Twitter's fault. That's more of the people who are licensing the IP for these organizations.
Oh yeah, I didn't know part of that, and you raised the overarching point. I think is astute. What I was trying to communicate is I wish Twitter would partner with the given organization. And if the NFL won't play ball, pun intended, then use the NBA to showcase everything that can be done, or even take an underappreciated sport like swimming. Everybody always says the only time people pay attention to swimming is at the Summer Olympics. But there's plenty of good stuff on websites like SwimSwam, plenty of videos. In fact, I just watched a video last night on how to do the difficult backstroke to breaststroke flip turn. So I would love to see them partner with cricket. Name any underappreciated sport and show the power of Twitter video and what can be how it not only how the medium can exploit it, but how it can lift the popularity of any sport. I'm
yeah. Well, that cricket IP is zealously guarded too. Like Facebook just bid $600 million to live stream cricket matches, and it lost its bid. So that's pretty valuable IP as well. But Twitter has been dabbling in partnerships for live video. So BuzzFeed has its morning news show, AM to DM. Bloomberg launched TikTok. It's kind of 24-hour news. There's this other kind of startup business news live streaming company called Cheddar, and then Twitter has been. I'm less familiar on the sports side, but they did briefly have live streaming rights for, I think, the NFL. They are kind of bidding for some of these things, although it's definitely really expensive to do so. I don't know, but I don't really watch TikTok or AM to DM, but I'm told they're getting like 1 million viewers a day. I don't know. Have you really encountered these properties?
I've heard of them, but no, I haven't watched them.
Yeah, but it is interesting, and that's another thing that I think Facebook got a lot of coverage for, but Twitter not so much. And I think Twitter, despite being the smaller social network, is actually beating Facebook when it comes to live video, and which you wouldn't think happened since they're the smaller social network. But it's just that like Twitter is just so much more of a real time platform that it has that natural advantage when it comes to live. And then I guess the last thing in the product that I have hated the most, and a lot of users haven't liked it, even though Twitter is reporting increased engagement, is the Twitter algorithm. Like, obviously, the thing that Facebook has been derided for over years is that it doesn't show everybody's content. It uses a newsfeed algorithm. Twitter was always known as the reverse chronological platform, kind of the complete opposite of what Facebook was. And it rolled out a kind of in case you missed it type of algorithm that you can sort of turn off. Like, I can turn off the in case you missed it feature, but I still see a lot of old tweets that people haven't retweeted, but they've liked, like basically every third tweet. I don't know. I agree with a lot of the criticism that it just causes you to see a lot of out of date tweets from like really old news from like 24 hours, which in Twitter terms is just eons ago. Are you annoyed by the Twitter algorithm?
Honestly, I love it. Listen, the history of Facebook is the history of Facebook making changes and people rising up. Oh my God, this is the worst thing in the world. And then they get over it. Facebook apologizes, doesn't change anything. And every time, Instagram, I think now has a curated feed. Everybody, Twitter is curated. And listen, there's so much crap out there that I am delighted when a social network uses its algorithmic genius based on my own preferences to curate what it deems most attractive for me, whether there's a delay or not. Nah, it doesn't bother me. I think I trust that you're familiar with Nuzzle, Nuzzle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, Nuzzle, excuse me. Nuzzle is one of my. It's become a habit for me every morning. It's one of 3 e-newsletters that I rely on. It curates. It does a brilliant job of basically doing fleshing out this lack or this. It's what Twitter's in case you missed it feature, I think, ought to be.
Yeah, so it basically ranks the most linked to articles that people you followed on Twitter linked to. So I would be more comfortable if Twitter had a separate tab for something like that. That it's like, okay, what's I see the real time feed, but what's kind of the consensus of the most important stuff that the people I follow think is important. I would rather that be a separate tab, but like Twitter is just so real time. Like I never really minded the Facebook newsfeed algorithm. I understood why that existed. It wasn't trying to be a real time thing. It was trying to cut the clutter from the noise, or whatever the saying is, find the signal in the noise. Whereas like Twitter, it really is like a real-time network where you like, especially when news breaks, it's so frustrating to be scrolling through your Twitter feed looking for the most up-to-date tweets, and then being just shown like tweets that are 24 hours old for news that's just old news at that point. I don't know. I can't agree. Like I every time that in case you missed it thing comes up, like once every like 2 months for me, I automatically click the tab and ask it to see less of this. And I think you can go into your profile and somehow de-emphasize Twitter showing you old news, where and I've always done that, and I feel like my experience is much richer for it. But anyway, those were all the questions I had for today. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me.
My pleasure. Yeah, listen, thanks, Simon.
And where can people find you?
You know, I guess I should give my Twitter handle. It's at jrick. But you know, the truth is, I'd much prefer a client over a Twitter follower. So the best place to find me is at my website, jonathanrick.com.
Great. Well, we'll definitely have to have you come on again. Maybe next time to talk LinkedIn, since I know you do some LinkedIn profile consulting.
And thanks to you, got a client in that regard. So yeah, of course, would be delighted to. Thank you, Simon.
Awesome. Okay. Well, talk to you next time. Okay. That's all I have for you today. Be sure to subscribe to the Business of Content on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. See you next week.